Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4, Episode 13. It's called Devil's Due. So full spoilers for the episode as always. This one features a very original series style villain, although it does have a bit of a next-gen twist on it in that Picard treats it a little differently than Kirk might have done, in that he's very cynical and tries to essentially disprove this being. But they come across this planet who is in great distress because 1,000 years ago, the population of this planet made a deal with the devil because things weren't going so hot, and they wanted to sort out all of their problems, the famine and the just everything, the economic crisis that was going on. It's a bit vague as to exactly what the situation was, but the world was in just chaos.
Yeah.
And 1,000 years have passed, and the prophesized tremors and other such activities foretelling the return of Ardra, this demonic devil woman who made this pact with them, is returning. And obviously the Enterprise goes in to try and help with what's going on, and this Ardra shows up, claims Picard. Let's face it, she's quite horny for him, and from then on they have to try and get this planet out of this contract, and the people on the planet are basically all believe this is real. Picard is not convinced. I guess it's a bit trickier as well when she decides that part of the contract states that anything in the planet's orbit also belongs to her, which seems very sketchy as far as legal dealings go, but that is the gist of it. How did you feel about Devil's Due?
Mixed. There's things I like, things I don't. I think it's very aware that it's an original series style episode, and is like, hey, look, we know. It's going to be self-aware about, like, hey, no, we're taking this in a different direction, but I don't think it can ultimately actually shed itself of that origin.
I appreciate what it's going for in that sense. I like Picard's skepticism. I like that no matter what, he's always about proving that she's some sort of magician. This is all just trickery. Hell, she disappears into thin air. We do that all the time. We literally have teleporters. It looks a bit fancier. Let's figure this out. And ultimately, that's what he does. He eventually proves what technology she's using to do all these various things and turn on to the Klingons' version of a devil. And then, of course, at one point, she turns into kind of our version of the your red pointy ears, horns.
Which
whatever.
Notably does not look as good as the Klingon.
No, the Klingon one looked a lot more monstrous.
The Klingon one, they've got like a whole suit there, for this like one gag, and then the Red Devil is a dude in face paint and what is clearly a $10 Halloween costume.
Which you could argue that that's kind of the point, is that she's evoking the imagery of the cheap classic Earth, Satan.
You could, but I don't think that was quite the intention.
Very possibly not. No, the Klingon one had kind of a sort of like manic predator vibe, and by predator I mean predator as in the film Predator. But the mask
You've
off.
said predator enough times now.
Obviously, yes. You can say predator. As
no,
much
I
as you
actually
want.
quite like the design of that thing.
So I like that aspect of it. I liked some of the amusement of having Data essentially be picked as the judge for the hearing, because he's an android, so therefore he'll be impartial and do everything kind of by the book no matter what. And there's a couple of moments where he kind of like tells off Picard, or doesn't go in his favor when he wants to object or anything, and there's a subtle look occasionally afterwards where he looks kind of sorry about it, and
sheepish is the word I'd use.
And likewise there's a moment when Picard is kind of finally making his case, because up until the last part of it, like, it's constantly like, well, this planet's stupid legal system means that this is correct and that's correct, even though to Picard it's all nonsense. And he's getting very frustrated because Data, of course, has studied this very quickly, as he does, and is following it to a T. But once Picard starts revealing all of the tech behind everything and showing that he's taken over, now he's causing tremors with a click of a finger, which is basically just like shock waves been fired at the planet or something like that. And It's just hologram technology for the changes. It's just teleportation for the disappearing for a second, or cloaking even, because at one point she makes the Enterprise seemingly like disappear, but it's just cloaking. It's just like a Romulan cloaking technique.
Pretty much. It's still there.
So, and when that happens, you can sort of see Data almost smirk a little bit as he's like sort of happy that Picard is clearly winning now, and she's not even get a chance of like.
Yeah,
anymore.
I feel Ardra, which I guess we'll continue calling it, because I don't think we learn a proper name at the end. I don't recall anyway.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, this is just some con woman who is read up in this planet's like mythology and decided to capitalize on it. She's got because they even mention she's got a crew on her ship, which we never see, but we hear about this crew that presumably like help her with various
Run
con
heists.
jobs and whatever it may be.
I feel like there could have been a desire to kind of have her come back. I don't know, maybe she does. She could have almost been the mud for this show.
The way she kind of like, because one of the things she adds into the stipulations of the case is that if she wins, then she basically gets Picard as her sex slave for all of eternity, and he agrees to this. And at the end, when she loses, she says, "Hey, you'd have had much more fun if you won." And it's just very flirty. And one of the things I appreciated earlier on is that when she first showed a couple of her skills, and they've got everyone, kind of in the meeting room talking about what she might be, I love that they immediately go, "Could she be from the Q Collective? Because this seems kind of Q-esque." And then, someone says, "What if it actually is just Q? Because he's got a bit of a flirtation with you, Picard." And eventually, he kind of rules it out, and obviously by the end, it's proven to all be fake, so clearly she's not. But I kind of like that. It's like the writers wrote a lot of the episode and realized, wait, she's a little bit Q. Maybe we should have the characters actually sort of notice that and use it as like, maybe she's a Q, and it's just there to acknowledge that, yeah, there's some crossover.
Like it's not out of nowhere, this potential power set.
Yeah, so I appreciated that. That's basically everything I liked about the episode, though, because for the most part, especially in the first half, when she kept, doing her stuff, and these people on the planet were scared of her, and they no matter what Picard was saying, they're like, no, she's, we made this deal with her, and we have to adhere to this. The people are scared, and all the rest of it. All of those scenes, like, so I really appreciated once it started acknowledging and Picard was fighting against it. But ultimately, it became like a mixture of two things. A mixture of, original series style tropes of her being this all-powerful being and the civilization that believe in her. And then when she started beaming on to the ship herself and refusing to leave and like becoming one of the crew members, it was just kind of, oh, this is just Q stuff that we've seen Q do before.
Yeah.
And because of that, I found the episode a little bit just kind of tedious, maybe. Not super tedious, but just...
Yeah. This is what I say, I think I'm mixed. Like, it's not that original, really, with what it's doing. Like I say, it's a little bit self-aware. It references Q. It knows it's like original series style, but is trying to prove it's not. I think what gets through it is the Ardra, the actress. I think she's quite charismatic and kind of has a lot of good chemistry with Picard, for example. And I think that carries it through a lot more than the script justifies, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I feel that the expectations for this show have risen considerably, and even when it has a weaker episode, I find it making some kind of, great moral point or something. And I don't know if I get that from this episode. I mean, obviously, during one of Picard's arguments, actually, there's one more thing I like, because I like this part of his case, is when he starts like sort of asking about, okay, so your civilization, just after 1,000 years ago, just after you made this deal and things became peaceful and you fixed everything, he starts asking, well, so did Ardra sit down and sort of like work out of like an economic solution? And the guy's like, well, no, I mean, that was just kind of like, us. Like, well, did she advise? We kind of did that. Did she advise at least? And he's like, no, we just kind of did that on our own. And he basically asks a bunch of questions like that, and it becomes exceedingly clear that there was no godly intervention. They all just kind of fixed things on their own.
They sorted their shit out.
Yes. They believed and made some kind of pact, and that's what gave them the strength to do it. And maybe that ties into the idea of believing in a god or something to give you the motivation and the belief that you can do something, but really it's just you doing it, and you're just giving yourself some sort of placebo motivation or effect. And that moment I thought was, well done. But I don't think it ever kind of becomes like one of like the great Picard speeches. It's not like, I mean, it doesn't help it that one of the best episodes of this show still was a hearing with Picard and Data that was trying to prove whether or not Data was like a sentient being and had rights.
I do think this hearing section at the end is probably the strongest, single, 10-minute chunk of the episode by quite a margin. But, it is hard not to think back to that episode as this is going on. And as reasonably decent as this section is, it does pale in comparison to that. Yeah.
It really does, because, I mean, the stakes just aren't there because it's not about, okay, sure, yes, Picard is technically on the line, but we know Picard's not going to become...
Right, and I do like that point that it brings up about, well, you kind of just did it all yourselves, and I wish the episode had kind of got into that a little bit more, and rather than trying to just convince the law that, oh no, this was, the contract's not binding for whatever, she's a fraud, I would have liked to see him maybe try and convince the people a little bit, or at least the leaders, that, hey, no, you guys did this. That's
the idea that feels like what and most episodes of this show at this point would focus on. It feels like that's the point that the episode should be about. It's about them realizing they didn't need this pact with the devil. It is just them. They just came out of this on their own. Admittedly, it's one of these weird things where, and again, maybe this is just because of like where we are in history right now, that their knowledge and understanding of like everyone in the planet knows of this pact from 1,000 years ago feels a little bit far-fetched, just because like how much do we know, or does the common person know about what things were like 1,000 years ago?
I don't know. I think this is kind of it seems like the equivalent of like having knowledge of the Bible, or like the basics.
Well, I'm talking about more. Well, I mean, okay, maybe because he's a leader, he knows more about it. But it was more so much when Picard was asking all these questions about how they got out of it. He was very specific about knowing that nothing else was involved. And
I get where you're coming from. I think this is an example where Trek stretches monoculture essentially, and it's treating monoculture as the planet, and it's stretching time to go with the same geographical stretching. In that, it's kind of like the equivalent of us looking at, I don't know, post-war examples of culture shifts, and, that a lot of people would know about, and it kind of feels like that's like the equivalent here to me.
I mean, don't get me wrong, technology is different on this planet. Like in 1,000 years' time, assuming we're all still here, I mean, not literally us, but the human race. If we're still
we're
here,
gonna be lucky to make it through 100 years at this rate.
But if we're all still here, yes, obviously I expect the record keeping of this period will be better than anything before it, because we have the internet, because everyone's recording shit constantly, because movies and TV are being made. At the very least, that ensures that people have a better idea of what life was like in the early 21st century versus the early, say, 18th century, and that's not even that's only a few hundred years ago. That's not 1,000 years ago.
I think. Okay, two big... I can't believe I'm defending this episode so much here. 2 big points. One, we do know quite a bit about the early 18th century. It doesn't take much knowledge to find out, especially with the resource. We just look at the internet.
No, but not to the same extent. No, that people are able to, because people are going to be able to see this era.
No, sure. I'm with you.
When I see like a movie set in that time period, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you did your research, and I'm sure this is as close as you could possibly make it. But none of us have actually seen what it looked like. So there's a little bit of guesswork. A little bit.
Right, sure, okay.
It's kind of like in Jurassic Park, where like, okay, we think dinosaurs look like this, and it looks realistic, but really we don't know for sure.
And then there was like a 15-year period where we're like, actually shit, I think they all had feathers, and then it's like back to, no, never mind, they didn't.
Yes, it keeps changing. The point I'm making is that in 1,000 years, someone will find the archives of YouTube, and they'll be able to say, hey, this is what 2 idiots on the internet look like sitting talking about Star Trek.
I think it's ambitious that you think YouTube servers are still going to exist. But my other point to defend things that, because this is in the episode directly, is 1,000 years ago they were technologically advanced. I don't know if they were quite at space travel, but they obviously had things in orbit, if like satellites at the very least, if they were talking about, if they were putting that into the contract.
Oh, sure.
And then part of what happened afterwards is they gave up all their technology and they went back, reverted to more quote unquote primitive ways. I think with that being such a huge, fundamentally shifting paradigm for their culture. And, to the point where they said when Klingons made first contact like 70 years ago, they didn't want anything to do with the technology. So I think it almost became like a religion. It became part of the core culture was built around this contract, this deal. So I guess that's why it survived so long.
Yeah, and maybe if the episode focused more on these people, I might have gotten a bit more of these points across in the episode, and I wouldn't be making these not complaints so much as just kind of like musings as I was having as I wasn't that engaged in what the episode was actually focusing on. And
fundamentally, I don't disagree with you. I say the bare outlines of all this information that I'm drawing from are in the episode, but. But I agree, it's not the best episode, and we should have spent more time with the people. That's kind of what I said a few minutes ago. So, yeah, I'm kind of defending it just because I can. Not really that I think it deserves it.
I do. It may be my least favourite episode of the season so far.
Oh, that's a bold claim. I'd have to check back at the list.
Because I don't... Objectively, it might not be the worst one, but I think it may be the one that I've been the least engaged in. I found myself kind of like bored and zoning out and kind of having to force myself to pay attention because I'm like, no, I need to talk about this. I need to actually take in what I'm watching and not just daydream. And usually I don't have that problem, and I don't. Even when we go back to like I don't know, final mission with like Wesley and Picard on their own, or I feel like most of the episodes have had something, and I've been impressed with details in a lot of them.
I think I enjoyed this one more than I did the Troy episode a handful ago.
Okay, that's fair, but that's low hanging fruit. Come on.
It is. Honestly, I just looked at the list and it's like, there are only there that I can obviously say that I enjoyed this one more than definitively, and I think that might be the only one.
All right, okay. I'll be honest, I forgot that one existed. Okay, maybe that's a second, but still, I wasn't super into it. And I just wish it was a bit more engaging. We didn't mention Data at the start of the episode. Data's playing Scrooge in the holodeck. He's acting out Christmas Carol for some reason.
Yeah.
I presume this episode aired in the vicinity of Christmas, and that's why they started.
I mean, it's about that time of the season, right?
Sounds about right. And it talks about basically trying to emulate emotions, and he's been studying method acting, and his whole plan is that since he can't use his feelings to inform his performance, he's hoping that he can perform to inform the theoretical feelings that he's not having. And Picard points out that the fact that he's even twisted the idea of method acting on its head already proves that he's a little human, that he's been that inventive with it.
The idea that he wants to bring his own performance rather than just imitate another actor, which we know we can do. It's like like he does with the musical styles, right? That's something that is more human than what he's should be capable of, and I think that's kind of where Ardra kind of underestimates Data for the back point of this episode, where she's like, oh, he's an android, he has no feelings, he'll be completely fair. And let's be honest, Data definitely gives Picard a little bit more leeway than he does Ardra. Like, don't get me wrong, he rules against him at points, especially early in the courtroom stuff. But when Ardra's showing her powers in the first half of it, Data's like, all right, I think that's enough. And then when Picard's doing it, he's like, I think we could let this go a little bit longer.
Yeah, but to be fair, there's more of a point being made that Picard is able to do it in the first place.
There is, but he kind of says it with that same kind of, just kind of, I see no problem here. Like, like they're kind of offhanded rather than like sticking by the rules. He's like just quite happy to like almost acknowledge that the rules are being bent a little bit.
And even, of course, when Data does eventually say, okay, that's enough, I think, Picard says, I agree. Ardra, why don't you turn it off? And just sort of lets it going for another like 30 seconds. And Ardra's like, I like the Tremors. That's fine. Let me go on. So, I mean, there's amusing moments. It's not a terrible episode. There's definitely moments in there to enjoy, but it's not up to the standard. It doesn't hit the depths that the moral debates, the ethical debates that these episodes often hit now. So.
Right. And I think it says a lot that most of the moments that we've talked about liking are in that courtroom section.
Oh, for sure. So there you go. That is Devil's Due. I will have a look ahead and see what's coming next time. It's called Clues. So here's the description on IMDb. Effects of passing through a wormhole give the Enterprise crew a sense that they were unconscious for more than the 30 seconds that they've been led to believe. Oh, so it's a bit of a mystery that there was a time jump that they don't feel like
with a title like Clues. I should hope there's a mystery.
I know, but I'm intrigued by this.
That does sound kind of interesting.
It's a weird thing to compare it to because it's not a really good movie, but I'm getting Blair Witch 2 vibes from the premise.
I never saw it.
Not that I suspect they're going to find a recording of all having an orgy on the bridge during this lapse in time, but
you never know.
But we'll see. We'll try to find out next episode. Especially if Q's involved, there might be an orgy.
Yep.
But there you go. So that's what's coming in next time. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe. Liking is super important, and it is the free way to support us. And you can let us know to keep all the same content coming and show us what you're enjoying. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. And it is worth mentioning we make more from that $1 per month than we would if you watched every single video we put out in a month on YouTube. So keep that in mind. Every dollar counts. But you get bonuses, you get early access to some stuff and various tiers. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in any of that. And again, help keep all the content coming. Otherwise, catch us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.